My name is Marina Corey, and I'm a designer tasked with looking at Nob Hill and the interventions that can happen there, from Girard all the way down to Washington. And we have had a lot of members of the community come in and voice their concerns and their aspirations for what could happen along Nob Hill. And we understand that the preservation of the character of the area is very important to residents. We understand that the viability of the retail is also very important. And we understand that there's going to be some density increases here as a result of art. And so we're trying to come up with development strategies and design strategies that could show how that development could occur, where it could occur, where it's more appropriate or less appropriate to occur, so that the character and the stability and the unique qualities of Nob Hill can be maintained, but not at the expense necessarily of the inevitable redevelopment efforts that are going to be coming here as a result of art. So, I've spent a lot of time talking to some residents here and also trying to understand what it is that we're dealing with and what are the conditions on the ground. And Nob Hill is very particular in this context of where the corridors, the areas of the corridor that we're tasked at looking at, because it happens to have historic buildings, a lot of characteristic buildings, and a lot of special buildings that residents are either attached to or that have very unique characteristics. So we began by driving and walking. And let's go to this map. So in trying to understand how and where development should occur in Nob Hill, we did an assessment of the likelihood of properties in Nob Hill to redevelop based on historical evidence we have, based on the character of the buildings, based on properties that are for sale, empty lots, and just areas that look like they're more in transition than others. So basically, the way residents have described Nob Hill is that there are two distinct characters to them. There is Upper Nob Hill and then there's Lower Nob Hill. So basically between Girard and Aliso is one character, or Carlisle, some people vary depending on where that happens. And then from Aliso or Carlisle up to Washington is a different character. What this map is showing are the likely redevelopment opportunities. Now that's not to say that the area, so the blue is the least likely to redevelop comprehensively, partly because, for example, there's a school here that's not going to redevelop anytime soon, partly, obviously, the historic buildings that we know exist here that everybody loves are not going to redevelop anytime soon. Once you move from Carlisle east, you start to find that there's many more opportunities for redevelopment by virtue of empty lots and buildings that are not as characteristic as those that are in this part of Nob Hill. So the blue shows least likely to redevelop. It's not to say it won't. The yellow may or may not redevelop in the near future, and the red are those properties that we think are highly likely to redevelop because they're either for sale, as I mentioned, or because we've heard from property owners who are interested in rebuilding. Now, we've also had to balance we've heard that there's a real parking shortage here. So one of our tasks is to try find areas in which parking garages can be built in places that would actually make sense within walking distance of the new stops. There's going to be one stop on Bryn Mawr and one on Solano, of course. What these little red lines are starting to show are priority streets. So we've looked at the art section and we're looking to see where pedestrian and bike crossings are likely to happen and where they're unlikely to happen by virtue of the fact that the median is there and will prevent it. So we know that Richmond, Wesley, Carlisle, and Morningside are those areas that will prioritize pedestrian and bicycle connections. We also know that Silver has a really wonderful little character to it. It's quirky, it's nice, the scale of it is perfect, and we're also looking to see how how those enhancements can be made there. And last but not least, as you can see, there's a whole range of alleys that run through the properties, and sometimes in the back of properties, sometimes in the sides of properties, but it really permeates the entire area, and we're trying to see we're going to propose strategies as to how those alleys can be improved, beautified, so that they can also become a way in which people can traverse through the community and not necessarily get onto Central or Silver. Sometimes they run north-south, more often than not they run east-west. Now, if there's one issue we have heard consistently from a lot of the residents who have come to talk to us, is the fact that they are unhappy with the fact that the heights have changed from what they had agreed to in a sector plan that was written 10 years ago and amended since then, to what the new zoning code, or what's called the IDO, is proposing. So what these two maps show are existing heights currently by the sector plan and proposed heights, and they are changing, and so we're trying to understand what that change may mean for the community. Now, because the BRT line or ART is coming through Central, it's not unreasonable to expect that some additional height would be given. The question is where it's appropriate and where it's less appropriate. What this map is showing is that basically between Girard and Carlisle, the heights were basically 39 feet, restricted to 39 feet and 3 stories, and then west of that it went up to 54 feet and 4 stories. Now the new IDO changes everything and proposes basically, as you can see, 45 feet for the corridor from Girard all the way to Morningside or Carlisle, with bumps up, what they call premium transit bumps up, on one block on either side of the station. So in this case it's Bryn Mawr, and then east of Carlisle all the way to Washington, it's 45 feet with a potential 12-foot additional height for workforce housing, and only 65 feet one block west of the station that's on Solano. And then after Washington it changes. So the residents have expressed a lot of concern about this height. Some people feel it's too high. Property owners are also telling us, on the other hand, that they feel that some height is more appropriate east of Carlisle and less appropriate west of Carlisle. So we're again trying to balance out those needs. So what we're going to be looking at are strategies and proposing design strategies and zoning code tweaks that would enable the character of the area to be preserved, basically. And we have told residents that there are ways in which you can get effective transitions to the residential neighborhoods and still allow for some variation in heights. Now, what you're going to see Monday night are proposals for sites that may redevelop. And what we intend to show are different strategies for different redevelopment efforts as we walk down the corridor. So if you remember the map I showed you that had blue, yellow, and red, we're focusing on those sites that are most likely to redevelop. And we're going to show different design strategies that are at different heights. And property owners will decide what's appropriate based on whatever their goals are for the redevelopment of their sites. So for example, there may be one site right here in which if a property owner were to build a 1-story garage underground, they may be able to go up 4 stories. If they were to build structured parking on 1 level or 2, they go up 3 stories. Or if they just wanted to have surface parking and a 1 or 2 story building in the corner, that's a viable strategy as well. So we want to outline all those options and let the public decide through your planning process and political process what's viable or not. Now, we have also heard that there should be a gateway into Nob Hill, and right now the intersection of Girard and Central is very open. We know it's not safe from a pedestrian standpoint, and there's been a lot of bike and pedestrian sort of crashes, and we'll be showing that data information, but this particular corner is ripe for redevelopment. We've also heard that residents coming down Monte Vista at this 5-way intersection where everything meets is also problematic. So this is one strategy that's being proposed as an example that's actually quite aggressive. Many residents have expressed a liking for it. But what it basically does is creates a usable, defined park where right now the triangular park is in this area, attaches the park to the block. This is where the Taco Bell is, of course, and proposes the redevelopment of the uses that are here in a more formal 2 to 3 story building that may have retail at grade, under an arcade to protect from the sun, and then residential units above. And then there's a small parking structure that may be one story with parking on the roof in the back here. Alternatively, you'll also see a design that retains these buildings that are here right now that seem to be healthy and functioning, but also creates a park here. And then there'll be a third strategy that shows keeping this triangular park and the intersection the way it is, exactly as it is. And so what we're hoping to do by these kinds of designs that we're going to be repeating up and down the block is to propose ways in which these areas could redevelop that enhance the character of Nob Hill, we would hope, and preserve the unique qualities of it, but also don't preclude development. We have heard from the Main Street folks, for example, that they're very concerned if this is to be a retail corridor, how to encourage that walkability once you get east of Carlisle. And so we're looking at trying to maintain that walkability up and down the corridor, and that means that some redevelopment is going to happen, but what the shape of that redevelopment is of critical importance. This block right here, which is right about a block and a half away from away from the Bryn Mawr station, is one in which we think we've put in a parking garage here lined by some shallow retail here and here, because it could right away take care of the parking needs of this entire area, as we know there is a shortage, and also provide you with an easy access to the station that's within less than a 2-minute walk. So we're looking at places in which to embed parking garages around the blocks that are not that are of the least obstructions to the residents that live nearby. And when those parking garages are embedded, they are lined, they are not visible from public streets, so that they're not a visual problem. And so that's what I'll be doing as I march up and down central corridors, looking at those kinds of redevelopment strategies. And so what we hope to have by Monday night for you to see are recommendations as to how you can preserve, even as controversial as it may be, one-story buildings. If you want to preserve one-story buildings, there's a way to do that. There are ways to do that through historic preservation TDR program, or transfer development rights, for example, where you pay property owners to retain the development, the one stories that they have, but the potential 2 to 3 stories that they could go to, you take that development capacity and you transfer it to an area that's more willing to accept density. That's one way of maintaining one-story buildings. There are financial implications to that. We're also going to be looking at the zoning code and and in particular looking at the character standards that have been established through your overlay. There's an urban development overlay that says that development that comes in here has to be in keeping with the character and the style of the buildings that are here. We're going to see if we can strengthen that language in some places where it can give you a greater level of reassurance. And we're also going to be looking at making suggestions as to maybe preventing the aggregation of lots beyond a certain size to prevent 65-foot buildings right next to one-story buildings. That's also possible, and you will have to take this through the political process to see whether it's viable or not. Our intention here is to propose as many solutions as we can to the residents, to the developers, and then let you all vote them up or down based on their merits and based on what you think is appropriate. We're not here to recommend only one design strategy. We really are very intent on recommending a whole host of redevelopment and revitalization strategies for the area that achieves the goal. It achieves the redevelopment goals that have to be met by virtue of the art, but also principally really does preserve the character and the unique attributes of Nob Hill.